Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingston, Texas, USA, with another episode of Torah Talk Weekly Parsha with our dear friend Moshe Kormornick. Very good to have you back again as well.
And Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Great Parsha last week. So this week we're looking on Terumah, which is Exodus 25:1. I believe it's roughly 3 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, this of course, my phone hasn't gone off all day, and it goes off as soon as we start. Go figure. I'll mute that now so that won't happen again. Very nice. So so welcome back. And we're looking forward to your shuyar today. Yes, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Actually, after last week, if you remember my busted lip from last week.
You know what's funny? I only thought about it when you pointed it out, but now looking at it for sure, you can tell it's not there. It looks like it's healed up nicely.
Yeah, thank God. Actually, for some reason, I just cricked my neck before. I have a sore neck.
Oh man!
Who knew that Wednesday nights were so dangerous?
That's very much you should get a hazard pay. I'm just saying. During the night while you sleep. I have actually slept numerous times in the past 4 or 5 years where I'd woken up with I guess you would call it the crick in your neck, and that is not okay at all. Oh my gosh! I mean, you can't drive because to drive you have to turn your whole shoulders to look because it's just really painful. But thankfully now I have teenagers who can drive, so I really don't have that issue at this point.
Good. I mean, I'm in Israel, so people don't turn when they drive anyway. They just wait for the guy next to them to honk their horn, and then they know that they're in trouble. So we're fine. They don't need to turn your neck at all.
Good for you. You won't have anything to worry about then. That's great. All right, very good. Terumah, here we go. It's all yours, boss.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yes, sir.
So I want to speak about today's Parshas Terumah, specifically focusing on, I would say, 2 themes. Some other things will come up, but essentially 2 themes. The first theme is humility, and it's certainly a good job that you're hearing this from me, because quite frankly, I'm probably the most humble person you're ever going to meet. And William, you're supposed to laugh somewhere along there.
I did, but my mic was down.
Okay,
I like that.
As long as I can hear you chuckle, I know that. Yeah. I know that people understood it was a joke. Okay, fine.
You're good. Very good.
I mean, it happens to be true, but I can't say it. You understand that, right?
I do. Which really brings up a question though about the point about as a Deuteronomy, I guess it was. When it says Moshe, because apparently it was some people attribute the last few chapters of Deuteronomy to Moshe's writing, but it says Moses was the most humble person, and it kind of, interestingly enough, it kind of brought that to my mind. Maybe you could, enlighten us one of these days on that. So
it's actually very. I mean, I'll speak on it now. It's very interesting because you would have thought that Moshe, how could he write something? I was so humble, and especially we find other examples in the Torah where he minimized his greatness. For instance, I think we even spoke about it, the Parshas Vayikra. So it's written with a small letter Aleph because Moshe wanted it to be like a Vayikar, as if Hashem just happened to speak to him rather than Vayikra. He called him. There's other examples as well in the Torah. You want to say something?
Yeah, how'd you know I was going to say something? Was it my breathing? You could tell my.
I can hear that. So
really? Oh, that's wow. You are very. I mean, that is very quick.
I can't see you, but I can hear.
That's awesome. So like on his, they said word is on the street that Moshe's birthday and his the day of his death was the same day, and then also on his at I guess that one parsha where his name was never mentioned just so happened to be, on his birthday, if you will. And so it was almost like, don't look at me, or God was saying, don't look at Moses, whatever. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, it's coming up, the 7th of Adar. We are now on 2nd of Adar, or at least by me. By you, it's still the 1st of Adar.
Nice.
Which means in 1 week today, Tuesday, it's Moshe's birthday and death day, as it were.
Yes, sir. Very good.
So I was just going to answer the question. Well, according to my answer, at least, that it is very interesting that Moshe could write, he was the most humble person. But essentially, he had to write the Torah exactly as Hashem commanded him. And when Hashem says it, Moshe couldn't take anything out of the Torah, even a little bit that wasn't true. So when Hashem said he has to write it, he has to write it. The way I understand it, because you only have a question on Moshe being humble, and therefore if you're so humble, why can you write such a thing? If you don't really understand what humility is not, oh, I'm not so great. I'm not that good. That is not humility. That's living in a false world. Moshe Rabbeinu knew he was the greatest of the great. He was the ultimate prophet. He was the only person who had complete clarity, as it were, or as close to clarity as possible when speaking to God. So he knew he was great. If he would have said, I'm not that great, he wouldn't have been Moshe Rabbeinu. But what is humility? Humility is knowing where your talents and strengths came from. And therefore, Moshe could have easily written he was so humble and been so humble and also understood his greatness. The way I envision it is somebody who's standing at the top of a mountain. So he can see the greatest of heights, and he knows he can see all around him. He knows he's very, very high, but at the same time, he knew that he's only on top of a mountain. So the way I understood Moshe's humility, as it were, is simply that he knew he was the greatest, but he put it down to the great help that God gave to him, the fact that his parents were the greatest Jews of the generation, the fact that his life was saved as a baby. All these things led to him becoming the greatest, which he 100% knew, but it didn't detract from his greatness. But at the same time, he was humble because he knew that in the opportunities he was given, he was able to become great. Do you like that answer, William?
I do, very much so. Thank you.
My work here is done.
Not quite. I'm not letting you off that easy.
Okay.
I'm enjoying this way too much. Okay.
So I do think humility and charity are very much linked, and perhaps it's like I was saying just now that, I mean, let's speak about charity. We can speak about charity is giving, is helping, but it's obviously also money. And when somebody earns money, or has money, I should say, let's say they have a lot of money and they think, should they give it away? Should they not give it away? And perhaps they have negative feelings towards it, or perhaps they are challenged by it. So it could be a time to reflect on 1 second, why did you get so much money? So if the person says, well, I'm very clever. So you can ask yourself, well, firstly, does everyone who's clever have money? And secondly, who made you clever? Well, I work very hard. Well, why? Who gave you the capabilities of working very hard? Ultimately, you're going to come to the fact that God was the one who gave you the opportunities to become so wealthy, because people have been in your boat and haven't become so wealthy. It's all up to it. It's true, we have to work hard and we have to make effort. But at the same time, our effort can only go so far. Our effort is just our effort. The ultimate results only come from God. So whether we have money or don't have money, or we have the capability of giving to other people, ultimately that's only because of a kindness of God. And not. It reminds me. I was just thinking now. It reminds me. I remember her story. I'm sure it's true. It's probably not true, but let's say it's true. Makes it better. There's a wealthy guy, and I think it was maybe 50 years ago, and he was a super wealthy businessman. And they said, how did you make so much money? So he says, well, I started as a kid. I was orphaned from my parents. One day I paid 2 cents for an apple, and I shined the apple, and I saw I could see my face in it. So I went to someone and said, Mister, would you like to buy this apple for 3 cents? So he looked at it. He said, yeah, okay. So he gave him 3 cents. With that 3 cents, he bought another apple, and he shined it even harder. And then he get 4 cents for it. So with 4 cents, he could buy 2 apples. And he said to his story, he said, and I worked like this day in. William, did you go? I'm
still here, yes.
Okay. So
I'm enjoying the story.
He said, no, it's something came off my computer. So he said, I worked on this day in, day out for 2 whole weeks. And then my uncle died and left me $14 million. So I'm sure it's a true story.
I'm sure there's true stories like that for sure. No doubt. That's great.
So if his uncle had died, who gave him the money? His uncle. But it's not really his uncle, it's Hashem. And even if he had been successful at polishing the apples, it's still ultimately Hashem, because who gave him the capability, the knowledge, the customers? Essentially, everything is from Hashem. Now, obviously, we've got to live in a world where we perform and we try to do our best. And that is, a reality. But at the same time, everything that comes to us is only from God. And therefore, when we think of it like this, when we have money, and I'm talking about more money than we need, let's say, and that could be anything, but even if not, but let's just speak about somebody who can afford to give. So why did God give you so much money? Was it so that you could buy an extra fancy car, go on an extra vacation? Now, I'm not saying anything negative about people who live in a good way. Obviously, there's what to say about healthy living and not healthy living and luxurious living. I'm not one of those people. Buy cars and have vacations, it's fine. But at the same time, don't forget that you have money for not just your own purpose. If God gave you more money than you need, then maybe God's giving you to help other people. And if you view yourself like a bank teller, I have a certain amount of money, and the guy comes to you and says, here's my card, can I have $200? So you're not going to weigh up and, should I give it to him, should I not? No, because you're a bank teller. You know that your role in life is to give. I have the money in my drawer, and I'm going to give it to the guy. So if somebody thinks like this, that, okay, God gave me a certain amount of money, it's really even easier because it's not necessarily, we can speak about it, but the concept of Misa, of giving 10% of one's earnings to charity, that's the easiest way to come up with this. That if we assume that, let's say we've earned a certain amount of money and 10% of it is to give to charity, so it's a challenge. I mean, I'm saying, Yetzer Hara, evil inclination, will make it a challenge. But really, if we're able to use our logical mind, we can say shouldn't be a challenge, because if God gave me $1,000, so within that $1,000 that God gave me, he trusted within me the $100 to give to somebody else. God didn't give me $1,000; He gave me $900. And if we can train ourselves to think like that, then it'll be so much easier giving. Certainly, what we're obligated to in terms of Misa, in terms of our 10%. But even further, if we can think about charitable causes, I'm not saying I'm involved in charitable causes, but in the past I've been involved in charitable causes. And when you go to somebody, I've been to somebody and suggested this is a wonderful cause, and perhaps you would like to give to it to become a partner. And I've heard back, well, I'm my 10% is I'm up to my 10%. And I didn't have the bravery to say, but probably I did not have the bravery, but I can imagine once or twice I did. Essentially, so what? Your 10%, fine, 10% is fine. But become a partner in this. Invest. There's so much more to invest in life than I've got my 10%, and therefore I can live on my luxury yacht, and live my life how I want because I gave my 10%. No, live life like knowing that God gave you a certain amount of things, whether it's your talent, whether it's your money, anything, and share it with the world. So you finish your 10%, that's wonderful. And even if you finish 20%, that's great. But recognize that there are certain good causes that you want to invest in. Just like if you saw a business deal, that you would certainly jump at the chance of, and you would push yourself and you'd borrow money. Why? Because you know it's going to pay dividends. So there are, in fact, every tzedakah, every charity opportunity pays more dividends than you can pay out, than you are paying in. But certainly there are certain causes that every person has a connection to, and they should put their hands in their pocket and they should give it, because they're connecting to the cause and they're investing not just in what they want, but also they're investing in their own. I've said it before, like we have to be on God's side over here. And God has a certain cause. This is a cause, whether it's a school or feeding the poor. So you want to give to that money because you want to say, God, I'm one of these people who gives to these causes. I want to help. If you're on that team, you're viewed by God in such a different way than if you were just, fulfilling your obligation just because, okay, God gave me $1,000, so $100 got to go to this. So I'll put it to this and I won't even think about it. I won't care. I don't even care which organization I give it to, because at the end of the day, I'm just fulfilling my obligation of charity. Somebody who thinks like that, it's great that they're giving charity. Do not take anything away from them. They're wonderful people. But get a connection to the mitzvah. Get a connection and feel how you want to give. And if we become givers, we're going to speak later, if we become givers, it changes our whole relationship, not just with ourselves, not just with the other people, but the way God views us. We're going to say that when it comes to charity, that God gives us, let's just say God returns what we give. It's more, but essentially God gives. We don't lose. Bottom line, we don't lose from giving charity. We don't lose at all. And therefore, give charity. And William, now's the time to explain your how people can subscribe. But it's not just when it comes to money as well. As I said before, people have talents. They should share their talents. Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of the greatest rabbis of the previous generation, I think 30 years ago or so was the previous generation. So he would also say that if everybody has to give 10%, not just of money, but if they're in learning, they have to give 10% of their time to help others who are struggling in learning. Help other people. Share your wealth. If your wealth is in knowledge of Torah, share it. If your wealth is in money, share it. If your wealth is in, I don't know, knowing how to fix plug sockets,
Right.
and someone needs it, so share your wealth. That everyone has the opportunity to give, and if you become a giver, you're a different person than a taker. You're a different person. Rav Dessler, he says there are only two people in life: there's a giver and a taker. If you can look at everybody's, even when some people, and it's true, when some people are giving, they're also taking. When some people are taking, they're also giving. If you set yourself in the place of giving, your whole life will be different. So that was the introduction. I probably spent.
No, that was good. Somebody in chat, S. Chassis Weekly asked in chat, can the rabbi please push back or not on the idea that 10% was to be given during the time of the temple? This was an idea I've heard. This is an idea I've heard of Christians, and would love to hear the Jewish perspective on it. Because, the whole idea of the church is you should give 10% of all your income to the church. So it's like they're stealing what doesn't belong to them. But also, what is the Jewish idea for, if you would like to, a non-Jew, a good way for a non-Jew, a righteous non-Jew to give? Would it be charity? Would it be donations to a religious organization? What would that be, in your opinion?
Can I just say the question back in small
Yes.
points? I think there are 2 points, and maybe I didn't understand it properly. The first point was today's obligation to give charity of 10%, and the second one is a righteous non-Jew, where should he or she be giving charity?
That works.
Okay, fine. So the first one, well, there's a bit of a world war about the halachic obligation to give charity, whether it's an obligation, a real obligation today, whether it's not whether it's a rabbinic obligation, and therefore, even though the Torah did not obligate everybody to give 10%, the rabbis came along. I don't want to say came along flippantly, but the rabbis in their great knowledge understood that this is what the Jewish world, the world needs, and therefore they obligated people to give 10%. And just as a side note, there are going to be differences if the Torah obligated it versus the rabbis, because inbuilt within the rabbi's obligation was certain where they obligated it. And then the third approach is it's a custom. It's a good custom, and it's a solid custom, and it's what everyone should do. My limited understanding is that the third approach, the custom approach, is the practical halacha today. And therefore, this means that, for instance, if somebody can't afford to give, or if somebody, let's just stick to that, if they can't afford to give, then they're not obligated in any sense, and therefore they shouldn't give. If you really want to know what the rabbis say, is if somebody can't give, they can't give yet, they should still take 10% from their income. And it's like a tax income, as in they can deduct certain things. They should still take 10%, they should separate it and give it to themselves. Because if they can't afford to give, then they're able to take. And at least if you're separating 10%, you're showing that you value this mitzvah. And if you value the mitzvah, then that's something. Now you can't give now. I can't give, but I'm doing everything I can as if I could give. I just can't practically give. I can't afford to.
I think that you said it. You said a really interesting point earlier on, that we have the concept that the money that we have is ours, but really the way we should be thinking is only 90% of what we have is ours. If we take that extra 10%, we're really realistically, you didn't say this part, I'm visualizing this part. If we take that extra 10% and use it to our own benefit, we're taking what doesn't belong to us. So if we could visualize, if you make it, $1,000 a month, just make sure that only 900 of it belongs to you. Then it's not hard to let that 10 go if you already know it doesn't belong to you. So anyway, just throwing through that.
No, you're 100% right. I actually heard a story of Aaron Leib Steinman. He was the greatest rabbi of just the previous generation, my generation. I've merited to meet him once, and I can't even describe who he was. I don't know who he was, but just I can't even describe the feeling of seeing the greatest rabbi in the world sitting, the poverty he was living in, but his face was shining with light and his clarity and he was, at the time he was, I think, 98. Okay, that was it. So Rav Steinman, there was a 2008 crash, if I remember, in America, and a lot of wealthy Jews who were affected, and a lot of them who had a close relationship with this Rav Steinman. By the way, I'm not going to forget the second question, I hope, but they had a close relationship with this Rav Steinman, and they all came to him and they said, how could this happen to us? We give so much charity, we give millions and millions of charity, and we've all basically lost all our money. So he said, apparently he said to the group, he said, is it true that you've all lost, or every single one? And sort of one sheepishly said that he didn't actually lose, but he didn't. The other people didn't know, but since the rabbi was asking, he answered. So then the rabbi said, did you all give 10%? So they also, we've given millions. He says, go back and check if you all gave 10%. So they all checked, and only this one guy gave 10%. The others, they gave millions, but they fell short. So what you're saying, I think, is right. If somebody's money or somebody's livelihood and the way they spend their money, it's only blessed by God if it's used appropriately. And therefore, you're right. I think William, you said it very well, that if somebody's taking the $100 of the 1,000 that doesn't belong to them and they're using it for themselves, I thought you were going to say it's like they're stealing. To an extent,
right.
To an extent, it is like they're stealing. They're taking what doesn't belong to them and they're using it for themselves.
Right.
That money is not going to work for them, let's say. Now,
right.
Again,
that's the key right there. That's greatly said. That money is not going to work for them. I think that's the answer right there, because it's like, I think people have the cause and effect backwards. It's like walking into a room and there's a light switch where you hit the light switch and the light comes on. Well, if somebody who misinterprets that would say, hey, every time the light comes on, that switch goes up. Instead of the other way around, right? And so I think the people who think that they don't have money to tithe, I think that they've got it backwards. That they would have money to tithe if they would tithe. If they would give your 10%, you would find out that there would be either what you had that was yours to begin with would stretch further. It would work for them, right? Like you just said, use that phrase, work for them. It would work for them better, and it would go further than that last 10% could have gone if they would just simply trust Hashem and go ahead and do that part and push that 10% out of their reach anyway. And then what you do have of the 90 would work better for you than the 100% you had to start with. So
I think that's a great point. I want to say two important things. So the first thing is everything you said is true, and even the Talmud, the Gemara explains that somebody who gives charity, they will get it back even if they can't necessarily afford to. And it's one of the things that one can even test God with. The parameters I'm not so clear about. Even the logic I'm not so clear about. But it says explicitly someone can test God with charity, meaning, God, I'm giving you this money and I expect to see it back. The way to do it and the words to use, I'm sure, are different. Again, I don't understand it, but it's black and white. I just haven't got there in my learning yet. And therefore, you're right. Everything you said, if you give charity, it will work for you, and the money that you gain will be blessed money, and it will, if that money you're taking to educate your children, the education will be better. If that money you're buying to buy food, the intake of food will be more kosher. All these things, it's going to work for you. So that's definitely true. What you want to say. I do want to make a point, and I think it's very important that we said there are three levels. There's a world war of arguments about what today's Misa is, what today's obligation to tithe is. Now, the fact that what I understand the current the halachic approach of today is that it's not a real obligation from the Torah, and even the rabbis did not obligate it. It is a custom. It's a good custom, and people like the Chassam Sofer, for instance, a great rabbi hundreds of years ago, he explained that to an extent when the Jewish people come and make a custom, it's even stronger. It's even stronger than a rabbinic ordinance. But the fact is as follows, and this is why it's really important. And it's true what you said. If you test God and you give charity, then it'll work for you and you'll be blessed. At the same time, somebody needs to know firstly where they're holding, also their financial responsibilities, and the fact that it's not a Torah obligation might mean that if they're not in a position to give, it might be irresponsible to give. So I'm not one of those people who says,
I see, right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm a bit. The topic is complicated because on the one hand it says God says test me, on the other hand, one who's got responsibility for other people, for their family, to go and take money out of their pocket, and everyone's got to know. It also comes down to emunah, faithfulness, understanding what God's want from them, seeing where they are. For instance, I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody they don't have any money to their name, but they hear this and they want to give $100 and they give $100. Now they can't afford to give the $100. Mostly, everyone can really afford to give a certain amount of money because A, they can deprive themselves of something, or B, they've always got the money stashed away, or wherever we see. There are always opportunities that somebody knows they're going to get money, even if they don't technically have the money now. For instance, but let's say somebody actually doesn't have the money. Let's say they owe somebody money, and therefore the money that they have is either for them or for the other person. So to go and give $100 to charity, I don't want this to be, I'm trying to say the beauty of charity, but it's fair to say that if somebody's being irresponsible with their money, even if it means doing a mitzvah to the highest degree, one needs to be very cautious. One needs to be very cautious. There is a level, and I'll say practically, I'll say how to know, for instance. Let's say I want to test God, and I give God $100 and I can't afford it, and I say, God, give me back $100. Again, I don't even like speaking that way. I'm just saying it flippantly in terms of whatever the test is. So I'm expecting the $100 because this is what I've done. And let's say the $100 doesn't come. So if you were then going to say, I regret my mitzvah, I only did it because to get the money, so perhaps you should not have given the money in the first place. But if you know that when the Gemara says you won't lose from giving tzedakah, where you won't lose from giving charity, and even if I give $100 and I don't see it back, I'm like, this was a mitzvah. The Gemara says I'm going to get the money back. I'm going to get the money back. How am I going to get the money back? I don't know. I was expecting $100 to float down into my hands, but maybe it's $100 saved on the fridge that I'm going to buy. Maybe I won't need to buy a new fridge because my fridge won't break. However God's going to work it out, he's going to work it out. I don't need to be the boss of God and the micromanager to say I expect it in this way. If you believe, and it's true, so you should believe, but if you believe and you're confident that the money you're giving away is going to come back to you, then by all means, give the money away. And as long as you're being responsible, you'd have to speak to somebody who knows you and also knows the laws better than me to decide that. I hope I answered some way. I want to address the second question about the righteous Gentiles, where they should give charity to.
Awesome.
But I want to broaden it a little bit because I don't think there's really too much difference where anyone should give money to. Now, it's a bit controversial what I'm about to say, but it's 100% true. If you look at the books, the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, it will give you a list of people and places and things that you should give money to. For instance, family members come first. People of your city, poor people come first. People who are learning Torah are up there. And there's a whole list of who to give to first. So if I was reading the Code of Jewish Law, I would basically say impoverished people living Torah in my city or in Jerusalem, they get. So I'd send all my money. That's how I would come out. But I've heard from my rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz. He said as follows, and he said it in such a way that I've never heard him say this about anything else, but the way he said, I personally spoke to Rav Eliashiv. Rav Eliashiv was the Torah leader of also my generation. I merited to stand next to him once, but not to meet him. And Rav Berkowitz said as follows, Rav Eliashiv told me, so I've heard it from him, but every single rabbi who knows what they're talking about, he didn't say it like that, but I'm saying like that, every single rabbi who says the same thing. One needs to know where they want to give, what is close to them. Some people, they just feel they want to give towards children learning, getting educated. Some people feel they want to give towards a hospital, some medical research. Some people Torah learning. Some people, let's go extreme. Some people, banning iPhones because of the unfiltered internet access. And I'm going to invest in making posters. Rav Eliashiv said the world needs people who have a certain direction in their heart And that's where they should be giving, because again, like we said before, that the mitzvah of tzedakah should be a personal one that I connect to. It's so much more beautiful if you think about it as an investment rather than an obligation. You know, if I'm investing in something I believe in and I love, so I'm going to give to suffering children in the Ukraine because that eats at my heart, and I want to be a partner in the people who are helping them. At the same time, you know, if I want to give towards people learning Torah, because I value the here when I'm in Israel. So, and I'm learning in the kollel where the people who learn they get paid nothing, like almost nothing. It's a joke what the people get paid, but they invest hours and hours and hours and hours, and everyone's living not so luxuriously, let's say. And there are a lot of people who would like money to help these people, and therefore, you know, if you value Torah and know what it's doing in the world, and you value somebody who's sacrificing so much to sit and learn for hours a day, when they could be, you know, a famous or not so famous, a lawyer or a successful lawyer, but you value them, so give money to them, because everyone in their own heart, I think the word is nediv lev, when it says about the tabernacle, nediv lev, which is a where they give their heart. Certainly, certain people who worked in the tabernacle after coming out of Egypt, that's what they are. When people donate, they're in a div lev. They're, as it were, they're donating their heart. They're not donating money. They're donating a heart. So where they want to address, that's really the way that the world is going to run. And God made it that way, that people have certain feelings towards certain causes, and that's the causes that they should give in. I don't think there's any difference between a righteous Gentile, a Jew, anyone. I think that would apply to everybody. If somebody genuinely doesn't know, or they have, they have two options and they don't mind which, then there are certain obligations, whether it's the family, like I said, people learning Torah, impoverished people. I think hopefully that answered somewhat of the question.
Yes, I believe so. I mean, the whole idea of what you said was, in general, it's not like you're giving the money away. If you're just donating just shooting out in the blind, you're just kind of giving your money away with, you know, hopes of return. But if you put it where you have a heart, you really are actually investing the money, and it does make more sense to do it that way. It makes like it would be a lot more gratuitous that way, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a practical way of living. Essentially, if somebody did give charity to a genuine charitable cause, something that I guess God would consider a charitable cause, then even if they didn't believe in it, they would certainly still get the mitzvah. Just a practical way to make this more, let's just call it a better mitzvah, is to be involved in a personal level, I think.
That works.
Okay, can I start?
You could. I know, man. I tell you what, I'm the king of derailment right here. That's no doubt about it.
No, this is great. On the contrary,
so welcome to Terumah, everybody. We're half an hour in, and I finally let him get back.
Thank you for having me.
Get to his topic.
Did I mention my sore neck?
Yes. All right, it's all yours. Take it away. Take part two, not take two. Part two.
Again. No, I was honestly, I was very, very happy. In terms of live questions, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer anything, but if you have any interruptions, that's also always fine. In terms of what I've done, I can't remember if I stuck to the order of the verses, so feel free to correct me if I've not, but I'll just go through what I wrote down. And this is 25:11. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, from inside and from outside you shall overlay it. As I said, my two themes of the evening were humility and charity, and how they overlap. But I want to speak about each of them, perhaps individually, and then we'll see how they come together at the end, if there's time. Now, the verse that I just read out to you was speaking about the Aaron. The Aaron is the ark, and the ark contained the Torah, as it were. It contained the luchot, the tablets, the new tablets and the old tablets, the ones that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai. And the Gemara learns from here, I'll just say the verse again, that you shall overlay it with pure gold, from the inside to the outside you shall overlay it. What I'm trying to say, what the verse is saying, is that there is a layer of gold inside and a layer of gold outside. The Gemara says from here, we learn a beautiful lesson. Just like the Aaron carried the Torah, So a Talmid Chacham, somebody who learns Torah, a studious person who learns Torah, they should also be gold on the inside and gold on the outside. In fact, if a Torah scholar whose gold on the inside does not reflect, I should say their gold on the outside does not reflect their gold on the inside, so he's not a true Torah scholar. That's the message of the Gemara. Just like we find that the thing containing the Torah, carrying the Torah, was gold inside and gold outside. So too, someone who learns Torah, who has Torah within them, should be gold on the inside and gold on the outside. And a true Torah scholar is only somebody who has both. That is what the Gemara says. So I had a question. We also know something else about the Aaron. The Aaron had, as we said in the verse, a gold on the inside and a gold on the outside. Why don't you just make it a solid gold? And then, what do you mean, an overlay of pure gold on the inside and outside? The answer is because there was a middle. The middle was wood. Right. We know that Aaron had gold on the outside, wood in the middle, and gold on the inside. So now, step back. We just said before that when it comes to the Aaron, the ark, a Torah scholar should be like the ark. Someone who carrying the Torah should be gold on the inside and gold on the outside. And if they're not gold on the inside like the outside, they're not a real Torah scholar. Hang on a second. There was wood. There was wood hidden in the ark. So how can we learn the beauty of a Torah scholar being inside and out the same when, if you look at the ark, they weren't the same? They were hiding wood. I think that's a great question. And perhaps the answer is as follows. The Das Zakanim asks a great question, a very important question. Why was the wood in the middle? It's not as if God lacked the ability to give the Jewish people gold. It's not as if the Jewish people even lacked the gold in the desert to make a fully gold ark to carry the Torah. So why was there wood in the middle? And the answer to this really answers our question. The Das Zakanim, one of the prolific commentators on the Torah in terms of, I think, 500 years ago, he answers as follows. You know why there was wood in the middle? Because solid gold is very heavy to carry. And therefore, the people had to carry this ark. And therefore, God wanted it to be gold on the outside and the inside. And not only that, we learned a message about Torah scholars got to be gold on the inside and the outside. But at the end of the day, someone had to carry this ark. And because of the heaviness, so God made it wood to lighten the burden of the priest who was carrying it. So let's now re-look at the message that we said. We said there was gold on the inside and gold on the outside, and that's what we learn when it comes to a Torah scholar. Also must be gold on the inside, gold on the outside. What about the wood? If we look at it further, we can develop and enhance, but really see the beauty of the Gemara's message. How should somebody be gold on the outside and gold on the inside? You know how? They should make it light for other people as possible. If somebody was heavy gold, meaning this, they were so righteous and so wonderful and so perfect, but everybody else had to carry them and struggle through them, that's not a real Torah scholar. Somebody who's so religious and it affects in such a negative way other people, that's not the way to be. The way to be is to be religious, 100% religious as you can be. But if your stringencies are affecting other people in a very negative way, it's time to take a step back and saying, well, I might be the most religious guy around, but everyone else is suffering. It's not so religious, is it? It's not such a Torah scholar thing to do if other people are being affected in such a negative way by your righteousness. In Yiddish, it's known as being from on Yenna's plates. What does that mean? The classic example is I guess on Yom Kippur, where you have a row of people and everyone's sort of bowing down and banging their chest in repentance. And as the guy's bending down, the guy behind him gets his heavy prayer book and puts it on his back, on his shoulders. So he's being very religious because now he's praying from a prayer book, but he's doing it on someone else's shoulders. That's not the way to be. And I think that is the message that we're really being told from the ark. The fact that the ark was gold on the inside, gold on the outside, that's what every Torah scholar has to be. But how should they be gold on the outside and the inside with wood in the middle? it should be as light as possible. No one else should have to suffer from your religiousness. I want to stress something very important. When it comes to actual halacha, law, so then we don't have an excuse. If somebody's not very happy with the fact that we're keeping halacha, so there's nothing really we can do, because at the end of the day, they're not happy, but God told us to do it. The Mesilas Yesharim says, let them laugh. Let them laugh at us, let them joke and mock, but we're fulfilling God's laws. So, God told them to do it as well. So the fact that we're listening, I'm sorry that they're not happy, but at the end of the day, we have to do what we have to do. But when it comes to a halachic, when it comes to a stringency, for instance, we spoke about before about Misa, about giving a tithe. So that is on the level of a stringency. Let's say if we're learning it's a custom, and let's say we want to give more than 10%, so it could be a stringency. But if we're being stringent and that's affecting other people, that is already too far. We need to take a step back and see what is the more religious thing to do. Is it to be more religious or to be less religious? Because really the less religious thing is being the more religious person, if you understand what I'm saying. So I think that is one message. I actually, I don't know why I'm sharing this, but I actually fell foul of this when I was first married and we were living in England at the time. And there's I spoke about the World War, about the Misa being, whether it's a Torah obligation, a rabbinic obligation, or a custom. So there's an even bigger World War about milk that is not supervised by somebody who's Jewish. Is it kosher? Is it not kosher? Can you eat it? Can you not? Can you drink it? Can you not drink it? So it's a stringency. Let's just get out of the way. Probably it's a stringency. So a lot of people living outside of Israel, they will have milk that is not necessarily supervised by a Jewish person for various reasons. The fact that it is only really cow's milk, and therefore cow's milk is kosher, that's probably the reason why everyone is lenient. There's what to say on it, but let's say that's the reason. Certainly in my youth, 100 years ago, that was the reason. So I used to I used to have milk like everyone else did, regular milk. Now, regular milk, who cares about milk? No one cares about milk. Chocolate, Twix, Kit Kats, Cadbury's, anything Cadbury's. Boost was the one for me. So yeah, I used to have that. And I hope my wife won't mind me telling you that she used to have it. Everyone used to have it. Everyone was having it, and Boost was our favorite. So I remember we just found out that my wife was pregnant with our firstborn, and the rabbi of the family decided that my child will not eat, will not have any milk that isn't supervised by a Jew. That is what I said to my wife, that's what I've decided. So she looked at me and said, "You mean like when he's born?" She's like, "No, from now." So she said, "You mean I can't have milk? No more Boosts?" So yes, the rabbi has spoken. So begrudgingly she went, "Oh, okay, well, I guess that is up for my happiness in life." And then she gently reminded me that the family Kormornick includes me as well, which was a bit of a shock. And it took me a little bit of time to get used to the fact that I actually had to put my money where my mouth was. I sneaked in a few more Boosts before making the final decision to go cold turkey or whatever I don't want to mix meat and milk over here, but to cut off the milk. So that was when I was being very religious on somebody else's shoulders, because I was saying, family Kormornick we will be stringent when it comes to milk, and therefore, wife, you and my unborn son will no longer have it. So the truth is, even if I would have stopped then and there, for me to impose that on my wife and family, that's also a question. Can my religious level be an imposition of them? There are perhaps you'll have a lot of audience members who might be going through a similar thing in terms of their journey, and it's always going to be a question of how can I grow without it hurting other people? It's a very, very difficult, hard question. Everyone goes through it wherever they are in life, whatever stage they are. Any level of religiousness or not religiousness, somebody who wants to grow, often it's uncomfortable for people to be close to somebody who's growing and they're not. there might be friction. So everyone has to make their own decisions. Ultimately, you need to know the halacha. You need to know what is an actual law, what is the stringency, and then how to act in a certain way. And I guess that takes guidance. So that was, I thought I'd share my own folly. But I'll tell you something. I'll tell you someone who was not like me. Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef. I have a feeling I've spoken to him. I must have mentioned him before. He's also a rabbi of my generation, and unfortunately, he lived around the corner from me for many years, and I never saw him. Terrible that I did that. And the first time I was close to him was at his funeral, with over 1 million people here in Jerusalem. No, not here in Jerusalem, because I don't live in Jerusalem. They're in Jerusalem. And so Rav Yosef, this is an amazing story. And this is somebody who takes their religiousness seriously and knows exactly their obligation and how to use it, when to be religious, when not to be religious. This is the gold standard, I would say. Rav Yosef, known for many things. Since our time is completely out of sync right now, I'll tell you an amazing story of Rav Yosef. His mind and his memory was unbelievable, absolutely phenomenal. They have a computer program called the Bar-Ilan. Bar-Ilan is a computer program that searches all Torah databases. So if I'm looking for a verse, but more than that, if I'm looking for something that somebody said 500 years ago in a phrase, I'll type it in. A few seconds later, I'll come up with essentially like a Google, the specific Google reference for books, loads of books. So when it first came out, they went to Rav Yosef and they did a test. They said, we want to see who's quicker. We're going to say, where does this, how many books in the past 1,000 years speaks about this topic? So Rav Yosef said, okay. So they said, okay, this topic, how many books? And they wanted to time who was quicker, him or the computer. So he said, okay, 8. So a few seconds later, the computer came out with 10. So they said, Rabbi Yosef, you were quicker, it's true, but you were too short. 2 books you forgot. So Rabbi Yosef said, no, I'm not going to mention my own books. He had 2 books that he wrote that spoke about it that he didn't mention. So that's also humility. But his mind was so quick. So this was a rabbi who was great rabbi. And he went to travel the world sometimes to give encouragement and teach Torah to people who would never have access to him. And he would go around the world. So once he was in America, and he was staying in somebody's house, and it was for Shabbat, for Shabbos. He was Sephardi, so for Shabbat. And he said, he doesn't sleep on Shabbos. He doesn't sleep, he learns. But there was no room to just learn. So they said, okay, we're going to leave you a light in the bedroom. But obviously the light's not going to be on. The light is going to be kept in the cupboard in the closet. Therefore, when you want to learn, so just open the closet a little bit and learn. So that's what he did. He had the meal, and his wife went to bed, and he was in the room, and he opened the closet. Wife went to sleep, and his wife, he opened the closet, and he started to learn. He heard rustling of the covers next to him, and he saw that his wife was agitated. She was asleep, but he was worried that he didn't want to affect her in any negative way. Excuse me. So he had a choice to make. Choice number 1 was learn from his memory. He knew everything in his memory, but in the dark, and he was worried that he might fall asleep, which he didn't do. The other option was to open the closet slightly and learn and risk the fact that his wife would A, wake up, or B, not have such a great sleep, or perhaps, C, she'd be fine. What choice did he make? So Rav Yosef had another choice, and I'll take a pause to build the drama. He did something else. He said, okay, to learn in the dark, I might fall asleep, not taking that risk. To disturb my wife's sleep, not taking that risk. There's only one thing left. He climbed into the closet, closed the door with a book, and stayed there the entire night, scrunched up, learning. So much so that his wife, when she woke up in the morning and she didn't know where he was, so she opened the closet to try and get some light, and she got the fright of her life when she saw her husband Rabbi, scrunch with a hanger in his ear or whatever. And that was that's how he spent the night, and that's how he stayed awake learning all night. Now he was somebody who for sure was a Talmud Chacham, was a Torah scholar, gold inside, gold outside, and the wood in the middle meant that his gold did not negatively impact anyone else. We see from this story how he didn't learn and risk weight disturbing his wife, and learning was so important to him. So this is what he did. I think it's a tremendous story of exactly what we're saying. I'm not sure about the time. How are we doing?
We are doing good. You just got about 10 minutes left still.
Oh, okay.
More if you need.
Where should we go? No. I don't want to.
Okay.
I mean, I do. I'm not going to. Okay. Let's then go to. Should we speak about? Should I take stories? You know, I'll. If we've got 10 minutes, let's see how far we get. Okay. Let's take another verse. And so 25:10. 25:10 says as follows. So also talking about the ark. It's completely before I told you that I was doing it in order. It's not in order. It's reverse order. It's still in order, right? So the verse says as follows. They should make an ark of. Oh gosh, I'm absolutely going to be embarrassed myself. Acacia wood. Acacia.
Maybe acacia.
Yeah, acacia. Atsei okay. Acacia wood. Okay, fine. So what was the measurements? 2.5 cubits length, a cubit and a half width, and a cubit and a half height. The question is, why half measures? Why didn't I would have thought, little old me would have thought that when we're talking about something as great as the ark that represented and carried the Torah, we would use full measures. God can make any measurements he liked. Nothing happened because they happened to do it and this was the size or this is what they had. Everything was ordained and divinely ordained and instructed. So let's ask this question. Why did God want specifically that every single measurement of the thing carrying the Torah was in half measures? So Moshe Kormornick, who is a rabbi I've met and spoken to many times, he's also amazing. So he answers as follows. He says, the message is exactly what we're trying to tell you is Torah, you can only get any understanding of Torah in half measures, meaning one can never complete the Torah. One can never understand fully any topic of the Torah. Anything. I just remember thinking about the story that there was a certain rabbi who drove another rabbi. The second rabbi is Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. I'm talking about the great. This year has been name dropping the greatest rabbis of just past 50 years. So this rabbi drove every day, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he would ask him questions specifically about one topic. The topic is as follows: the second day of Yom Tov, the second festival day outside of Israel. That was his topic. He wrote a book about it, and it was so big. Any possible question that he could think about it, anything he's ever learned, anything that's ever been written, he read and he asked this rabbi, and he wrote a book about it. And at some point, he carried on asking a question. The rabbi turned to him and said to him, leave it for other people. There's always going to be more questions. At some point, publish your book. You're always going to have more questions. So the message, said Rav Moshe Kormornick, who celebrated his 97th birthday this week. I don't think he's watching, so there's no need to say happy birthday. I mean, you could say happy birthday, but he won't know. That he says as follows. Again, the question is, why did God make that the thing that carries the Torah be in half measures? And the message is as follows: that one who learns Torah should be humble enough to know that they will never acquire a full grasp of the Torah. Now, we always have to try. And whatever we say we know, we have to know it very, very well. And we're not necessarily going to be contradicted in what we know, because one can never learn anything and assume that they're going to get contradicted. That's not what we're talking about. When the rabbis say this is the law and we get it from this verse, that's the law and they got it from this verse. But to the full depth, to the length and the breadth of what God wanted in teaching us this, that is up for every generation to gain more and more and more. And firstly, that's I guess you could look at it two ways. You could look at it in a very pessimistic way and say, well, if I'm never going to, acquire the entire Torah, then why bother? That's pretty depressing. But on the other hand, you can look at it this way, that means that the entire world until now was capable of getting a certain amount, but there's still room for me. There's still room for me to gain Torah, even that people that haven't reached before. We spoke before about Moshe Rabbeinu and the fact that he was so humble despite being so great. He was standing he was like on top of the mountain. So it's true he was so high up. But on the other hand, he knew that his height was only his height, and he was on top of a mountain. So us today, we could also, look at it very positively. What I just said, we've had so many rabbis and books and educators to build on, and we can stand above them on their shoulders, as it were, on the shoulders of giants, and grasp even higher and get even more. So I personally look at this message very, very positively, and with full of hope that the Torah being so great and so vast, it gives everybody an opportunity to grab a piece of it, and I encourage everybody to do so. Actually we just to solidify this message, we mentioned before the concept of Torah scholar, and I dropped in the name a Talmid Chacham. The ultimate Torah scholar in Hebrew is called a Talmid Chacham. If you translate that literally, it means a student of wisdom. So it's strange, because I would have just called them a Chacham, a wise person. Chacham is a wise person. Why is a Torah scholar called a Talmid Chacham, a student of wisdom? A student, more specifically, a student of a wise person. And the answer is, like we just said, that we should never think that we have got Torah. We are not the rulers of God's knowledge. Absolutely not. We can't come close to it. A drop in the ocean is not even accurate. And therefore, we can only ever be a Talmid Chacham. We can only ever be a student of wisdom, because we've never completed learning. We're only students of wisdom, which is always going to be above us. And that perhaps is exactly the message in terms of the half measures. The half measures are to teach us this in a very positive way, that we can only acquire so much of Torah, but there's so much left to gain and to grab. Now, because you behave so well, William, I'm going to skip. I'm going to tell you a story that I just heard.
Okay.
Okay. I didn't. Okay, fine. So I was going to speak about charity, and we mentioned everything at the beginning, which should have been at the end. So there was a story I wanted to say, and I heard it just now, like 10 minutes ago, and it happened a few months ago. No, not at all. Absolutely not. That was the second story that I'm not telling you. This one happened.
Sure, you're going to leave a teaser for next week.
This one happened 100 years ago.
Okay.
It was in the First World War, and the story was told of the great-great-grandson from his great-great-grandfather, and the grandfather at the time of the First World War was in he was in the German army, and they were in the Swiss Alps or the Italian peaks, or I think the Swiss Alps, and they were fighting Italy. Why were they in the Swiss Alps fighting Italy? Can't be true. They were in Italy. Germany was fighting in Italy in the First World War, and therefore they were somewhere in Italy. And I remember him saying peaks, so he was in the mountains. You can say I can see. I just heard the story fresh. And this German soldier, so this Jewish German soldier was a scout. He wouldn't like make fires and dib. He would look for enemy soldiers, and when he would find the enemy soldiers, he'd report back to his troops, and they would do a surprise attack. And that's exactly what they did. He went out and he found a group of Italian soldiers, and he reported back. And the German army in the First World War, they did a surprise attack, and they took the Italian soldiers by surprise. That was the beauty of a surprise attack. It was successful, and they rounded them up, took away all their weapons, and they were going to lead them back to their base camp. And then the commander said, "Why are we bothering taking them all the way back? It's such a schlep." Now, schlepp's a Jewish word, but it's probably a German word as well. And he wasn't Jewish. But he said it's such a schlep. Let's just kill them. After all, they're enemy combatants. And for us to go all the way back down to the mountain to why should we bother? Let's just finish them here. So this Jewish army in the German army, he said no. He said, we can't do that. We've taken their weapons, going to kill them in cold blood. They're innocent. He said, they're innocent, they're the enemy. he says, we can't do it. We can't do it. We can't kill unarmed people. Just, So apparently the German said, I'm doing it, so move out my way. And apparently the Jewish guy said, no, you got to go through me first. So I know the German stomped off and went fine in a German accent, which I'm not going to do. And the Italians, it was saved and fine. Fast forward to after the war, this Jewish person went to America. He started living in America, and he was in a construction business, and he used to go to a certain supplier, and this supplier, I think there was a fire that destroyed his warehouse, but loads and loads of stuff was still salvageable to some degree. So he said to his friend, the supplier said, do you mind if I, if you're going to get rid of this stuff, can I see what works for me? So he says, sure, just, go take whatever you need. It's all insurance. It's all going to get destroyed. Whatever you need, just take. So he arrives with his truck. He spends a whole day filling up his truck with anything he can get that's worth money. It's valuable to him. And afterwards, he finishes up. He goes and he wants to wash up. So he looks for a sink somewhere, and he finds a sink right at the back in the corner. And he turns on the sink, and he's washing his hands, and he realizes the water's very, very dirty. And then he realized it doesn't smell of water. So he realized pretty quickly what it was. This was after the First World War, in the Great Depression, where there was the prohibition, meaning that alcohol was forbidden. And there was a big mafia racket to sell alcohol, and it seemed to be that he had discovered the secret sauce. Source SAUCE and SOURCE. The secret source of the thing. So he realized pretty quickly. All of a sudden, he heard talking behind him, and he recognized it was Italian because he was a German scout in the thing, and he spoke Italian. I think he was also the interrogator and everything. So he heard Italian. He realized he was in trouble because he heard them say "Oive." They weren't Jewish, but they could have even said "Oive." Oive, he's found our secret supply, which happened to be a huge tank underneath the whole factory. This tap was keeping all of New York the alcoholics happy. This this faucet over here. So they said he's discovered us. We need to get rid of him. So he, this Italian who was a German. He finished up. He said, oh, "Okay, I'm done now." It's funny, dirty water, and they weren't buying it. So, a whole group of them said, "Sit down." And so he said, "Well, what's wrong?" "Sit down." So he sat down, he tied him up and said, "Listen, you understand what's going on here. This isn't water. Don't play funny games. You know our secret. We're going to have to kill you. And let's just wait till the boss gives the final judgment call." So they called in the boss, and they said to the boss, "This is what happens, and he's discovered. So we have to do away with him." So the boss looks at the guy, and he looks at his troop of Italian mafia guys, and he goes, "I don't know, Mario, Luigi, Princess Peach." I don't know who else was in the Mario thing. He says, "Leave me to it. I'm going to deal with it myself." They say, "You sure?" He says, "He could be a dangerous guy." He says, "Well, he's tied up, and what do you want from me? I'll be okay." So they all leave. And he said to this guy in fluent German, starts speaking to him, he said, "Where were you in 1921 in the winter?" He says in German, I don't know what you're talking about. Where was I? I don't know. Where was I? Austria? I don't know. Switzerland? He says, "No, where were you?" He says, "Wasn't it anywhere?" He says, "Were you in the army?" So he says, "No, not here. Italy and Germany." He says, "No, at all. The army, I'm as American as, apple pie," with his German accent. So he starts speaking in Italian, and he says, "Listen, I know you were in the army, and you were in the whatever it was, the mountains of the thing." So all of a sudden he says back in Italian, "How do you know that?" He says, "Because I know that you were the guy who stood up to the commander, and he said, if you want to shoot them, you've got to shoot me first." And this Italian mafia guy said, "I was the one standing behind you. So you saved my life. And because of that, I'm going to let you go. Just don't tell anyone." Obviously, he told someone at some point, because otherwise I wouldn't know the story. But that's besides the point.
Right.
Why am I telling you this story? I absolutely forgot to tell you the entire Torah message beforehand, but the story is alone is itself. That let's just tie it up to the very beginning. When we go out of our way to give to other people, we don't lose. We don't know when we're going to get, we spoke about the $100. We don't know when we're going to get the $100 back, how we're going to get the $100 back. To our eyes, it might be I never got the $100 back, but to God's eyes, it was, I didn't just give you $100. I gave you manyfold because I gave you this and that, and it's worth much more than $100. This guy went out of his way to save other people's lives. He did not lose. Not only did he not lose, he gained his life. He gave, he was willing to risk his life, and he gained life. He gained his life from it. That was just a story. It's a nice ending, a story to say it's true what we're saying. That when it comes to giving is not, when I give, let's speak like this, just for instance, a flame. When I've got a flame, I've got a candle, and I take a match, and I take the match, and I give another flame. Does this lose any light? No, it doesn't. When someone is a giver in that sense, it's true. It's true they practically, physically giving, but they're not losing anything. In fact, they're gaining, as we've said, and they're definitely not losing. But if like we were saying right at the beginning, a practical way to look at everything when we're giving to other people is I'm giving, but I'm never really giving. I'm never losing anything from myself. So as I said before, whether it's money, whether it's talents, whether it's skills, whether it's time, whether it's a listening ear, whether it's a smile, anything that we're capable of giving that somebody else might need, especially if it doesn't take anything away from us. We're walking down the street and there's a stranger coming. So, you can either look the other way or just nod. If you give them a smile, you know how much a smile does? We've all got talents and capabilities. We've all got skills. We've all got so much to give, and that other people need, especially a listening ear. Old friend who needs a quick text saying, been a while, just thinking about you, hope you're okay. Do you know how much that gives to a person? That perhaps is the most, the best message I can give, that we have so much. It's all God given. Why did God give it to us? It's to share with the world. And you know what? If we're using the things that God's given us in the right way, he's only going to give us more. Like anyone who's doing any businessman who's a boss, and he gives his workers certain projects and a budget. So he looks over it and he says, if you've used the budget well, so not only are you trustworthy for this budget, but I can even add to that. But if you're frivolous with the spending, you're spending it on yourself, well, you're not even worth the budget I'm giving it. I'm giving to you. So I don't know, that perhaps on one leg and off the cuff is maybe the most important message. That what we have, share. What we have, don't just share because you've got it and you're great. Share because God gave it to you to share. Whatever we've got, William, you're doing amazing things over here. But everyone in the audience has got so much to give. Not just to strangers, not just to family members, not just to the world that they can think, oh, how big can I be? No, to your children, to the neighbor. It doesn't need to be a meal. It doesn't need to be money. It can be anything. We should always, if we all become givers. I'll finish with this, that on a more Torah note. I'm not going to speak about Kabbalah, but I don't know anything about Kabbalah. But when we said before that there are two types of people, there's a giver or a taker. So if you become the giver, the Maharal explains that if you become a giver, so now I'm giving what I can. Sometimes I can't give, some things I can't give, but if you're a giver and what I can't do, so I'll try, but I can't. But I'm putting myself in the place of a giver. So God will say, okay, if you're a giver, so I'm gonna give to you because I want givers. I want people to proliferate my message. I want people to take my blessings that I'm giving and spread it around the world. And therefore you're on my side and you're going to do that. If we're a taker, even if we're taking because we have to, but we never really have to, because even when we take, sometimes we can give. If we want to give, if we strive to give, if we try and give whatever we can, even if we have to take, we're not really a taker, we're a giver. Happens to be that we need to take sometimes, that's fine. Everyone needs to take. A baby is a taker, and an adult should be a giver. That's how it works. and even when we need to take, if we're doing it in a way of still giving, we want to give, we're ultimately givers. So let's be a giver. Let's do what we can. Let's use our talents and our time and what we have, and try see where it's needed in the world, and try and give and share of ourselves to other people. We won't lose, we'll only gain.
That is a great message and a great closing spot for sure.
Thank you.
Very good. Guys, thank you all for tuning in. Rabbi, thank you for your time. And we'll see you probably again next week, I'm supposing. At least hopefully.
I hope so, although with no injuries, if you don't mind.
Yes,
yes.
You should
stay still on Wednesday so that nothing goes wrong.
You should have a refuah shlema, head to toe, no doubt. And so Rabbi Rafi Mallet will be back probably in about 2 weeks. So hopefully next week we'll see Rabbi Kormornick again. And don't forget to check out his books at shortvort.com. There's 4 books there, 3 that we know of that we actually own, and then working on the Yom Kippur and the Rosh Hashanah one as well. And every week, just so you guys know, Rabbi, my wife is making it further through the book, the one that your wife wrote and that you co-wrote, and she's
the Last Slave.
Yep, and
you should tell everyone
completely just floored by that book. It is just such a wonderful read for her. Yeah, so if you guys you got to check it out. It's great. You can find the link to it in my video description area. Just click on that link; it'll take you straight there. But it's a great book.
William gets a certain percentage of money from every sale, so everyone should buy the books. Everyone should buy 100 books in order to make William very wealthy, and then he'll give everything that we've spoken about will become very practical. Happens to be I might do okay from it as well, but that's irrelevant. Support William.
There you go. We do get a little I think with every sale, depending on if it's a book, it's like 2%. If it's a pack of beer, you get like 5%. I'm just kidding. I don't know how that works, but I get like maybe 4 or 5 cents off of each sale. But it adds up over the next 5 years or so. All that added up, it'll be helpful. But more importantly, it's just more for your convenience as well. Just look in the video description here. You'll find that book, all 3, maybe all 4 of them in that same area. So. Rabbi, again, thank you for your time, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you same time, same place next week, Hashem willing. Peace out, everybody. Shalom.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TANACHTALK.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה